In the heart of the bustling town of Kiwanda, where merchants lined the streets with their colorful wares and the scent of roasted plantains lingered in the air, there was a shop unlike any other. It was called the Enchanted Tresses, and it belonged to Madame Nshila, a woman known far and wide for selling the finest, silkiest, and most beautiful hair extensions and wigs. Women from neighboring villages and distant lands journeyed to Kiwanda just to buy from her, for it was said that her hairpieces had an almost magical quality. They never tangled, never lost their shine, and seemed to make the wearer more attractive and confident. Those who wore them found their businesses flourishing, their admirers growing, and their voices carrying more authority. Madame Nshila was wealthy beyond imagination. Her shop, a grand two-story building adorned with golden carvings of mythical creatures, stood in the center of the marketplace. Servants dressed in bright kitenge fabrics greeted customers with deep bows, guiding them into rooms filled with mirrors and soft carpets. The scent of exotic oils and incense filled the air, lulling visitors into a sense of luxury and ease. But there was something eerie about Madame Nshila. Beneath her charm and graceful smiles, her eyes held a darkness that few noticed. She rarely spoke of her past, and though she was admired, no one truly knew her origins. One evening, after a long day of sales, she sat alone in the grand hall of her mansion behind the shop. Before her, a long wooden table was covered with strange objects, black candles, strands of hair tied in knots, and bowls of thick, red liquid. The air was heavy with whispers, voices unheard by ordinary ears. A shadow slithered across the walls, curling around her like a snake. It spoke in a low, gravelly voice. "You have done well, Nshila. More women wear a mark without knowing it." Madame Nshila smiled, running her fingers over a lock of jet-black hair that gleamed unnaturally. "Their beauty is my gift, and their souls, well, they will soon belong to us." The shadowy figure let out a chilling laugh. What none of the customers knew was that every wig, every extension, and every braid sold in the Enchanted Tresses carried a hidden curse. A curse that slowly bound them to Madame Nshila's secret cult, drawing them into darkness, without their knowledge. And soon, the trap would be complete. Days turned into weeks, and Madame Nshila's business continued to thrive. Women from all walks of life, wealthy merchants' wives, young maidens preparing for marriage, and even village elders, came to her shop, eager to purchase the finest hair in all of Kiwanda. One of her most devoted customers was Ao, a bright-eyed young woman who had recently opened a fabric stall in the marketplace. She was ambitious and hardworking, determined to make a name for herself. When she first stepped into the Enchanted Tresses, she was mesmerized by the beauty of the wigs. "This one will suit you perfectly," Madame Nshila said, placing a thick, wavy bundle of ebony black hair against Ao's head. "You will shine like the morning sun, and people will see your true power." Ao's heart swelled with excitement as she made her purchase. The moment she wore the wig, she felt different, more confident, more powerful. When she returned to her stall, people flocked to her, admiring her beauty and purchasing more fabrics than ever before. That night, as she lay in her small hut, she dreamed of shadows circling her, whispering in an ancient tongue. She awoke in a cold sweat, but as soon as she touched her hair, the fear melted away. It was just a dream, she told herself. But she was not the only one. Across town, Mama Juma, an elder known for her wisdom, had also purchased a bundle of Madame Nshila's finest braids. Though she had never been vain about her looks, she couldn't deny how vibrant and youthful she felt wearing them. But as the days passed, she found herself forgetting prayers, snapping at her grandchildren, and feeling an unfamiliar restlessness in her soul. One evening, she sat outside her home, watching the stars when she noticed something strange. The reflection of the moon on a nearby water pot shimmered unnaturally. As she leaned closer, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Her reflection did not blink when she did. Meanwhile, in a grander home, Lady Ife, the wife of a powerful merchant, admired herself in the mirror. She had never felt more beautiful, and her husband was treating her with renewed adoration. But something was off. The house felt heavier, darker. And every night, she heard soft chanting just as she drifted to sleep. What none of them realized was that each strand of hair they wore carried a dark essence, feeding off their energy, their spirit, their very souls. And Madame Nshila watched from the shadows, her power growing with every new customer. But fate had a way of revealing the truth, and soon, the veil of deception would begin to unravel. The town of Kiwanda, once filled with laughter and song, had begun to change. It was subtle at first. People grew more irritable, dreams became restless, and an eerie stillness settled over the marketplace as the sun dipped below the horizon. Ao, who once prided herself on her hard work, found herself waking up later each day, her mind clouded with strange thoughts. Her once thriving stall now felt suffocating, as if unseen eyes watched her every move. One evening, as she packed up her fabrics, she overheard two women whispering nearby. "Have you noticed how strange Mama Juma has been?" one woman said. "She forgot the words to a blessing she has recited since we were children." And Lady Ife, the other woman added, glancing over her shoulder. "She stays locked in her chambers all day, only emerging at night. They say her husband found her speaking in a voice that was not her own." Ao felt a chill crawl up her spine. She had noticed changes too, not just in herself, but in those around her. Even the town's most joyful children no longer played in the streets after dark. That night, unable to sleep, Ao sat by her small lantern, running her fingers through her wig. The moment her fingertips brushed the strands, a shiver passed through her body. It was as if something within the hair pulsed. Then, the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like the rustling of dry leaves. But soon, they grew louder, overlapping, their words ancient and unreadable. Ao's heart pounded as she turned her head. The room was empty, yet the whispers surrounded her. Fear gripping her chest, she yanked the wig from her head and tossed it across the room. The moment it left her scalp, the whispers stopped. Breathing heavily, she crawled toward it and peered closely. For the first time, she noticed something she had never seen before. The strands of hair twisted and curled as if alive, shifting under the moonlight like tiny black serpents. Terror clawed at her throat. She knew then that something was terribly wrong. The next morning, Ao rushed to Mama Juma's house. The old woman sat outside, staring blankly at the sky. Gone was the wise elder who once shared stories and advice. In her place was a hollow shell, her once bright eyes now dark and distant. "Mama Juma," Ao whispered, kneeling beside her. "It's the hair, something is wrong with the hair." At the mention of the word hair, the old woman flinched, her breathing shallow. "I hear them," she muttered. "In the night, they call to me, they ask for more." Ao felt the blood drain from her face. Madame Nshila's enchanted wigs and extensions were not just fashion accessories. They were something far more sinister. And the truth was only beginning to reveal itself. Ao's breath came in short gasps. The realization that the hair was cursed filled her with dread. She grabbed Mama Juma's frail hands and squeezed them gently. "Mama, we need to find out what's happening," she whispered. Mama Juma's lips trembled as she reached up and hesitantly touched her braids. "I try to take them off," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they don't come off." Ao's heart pounded as she watched Mama Juma tug at the roots of her hair. The strands, once silky and beautiful, were now fused to her scalp like living vines. The harder she pulled, the deeper they seemed to grow into her skin. Ao scrambled backward, horror twisting her stomach. "We must go to the village priest," she said. "He will know what to do." But Mama Juma shook her head violently. "No," she hissed. "Madame Nshila, she watches us." Ao felt the air grow thick with an unnatural stillness. She followed Mama Juma's gaze to the street, where a lone figure stood under the shade of a mango tree. It was one of Madame Nshila's servants, dressed in a deep purple robe, his dark eyes staring unblinkingly at them. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply watched. Ao swallowed hard. It was clear now they were being monitored. The hidden mark. Determined to break the curse, Ao returned home and examined the wig she had discarded the night before. As she spread the strands apart, she noticed something woven into the roots, a strange symbol etched onto a tiny bead hidden beneath the hair. The symbol pulsed with a dark energy. She had seen markings like this before, on the walls of an abandoned shrine deep in the forest. It was an old, forbidden mark that spoke of soul-binding rituals. Her hands trembled. Madame Nshila's hair was more than cursed. It was a trap. Every woman who wore it unknowingly offered a piece of her soul to something far more sinister than vanity. Ao had to act fast. She grabbed a knife and scraped at the mark, but the moment the blade touched the bead, a sharp cry echoed through the room, a sound that did not belong to this world. The wig writhed in her hands, twisting violently like a nest of snakes before falling still. Ao gasped, stumbling backward. She had no doubt now, this was dark magic. A secret meeting. Under the cover of night, Ao gathered a small group of women, Mama Juma, Lady Ife, and 3 others who had also begun experiencing strange visions. They met in Mama Juma's hut, speaking in hushed tones. "We must confront Madame Nshila," Lady Ife whispered. "She has deceived us all. But she is powerful," another woman added. "And she has followers. We cannot go to her blindly." Ao nodded. "We need someone who understands this kind of magic. Someone who can break the curse." Mama Juma's voice was barely audible when she spoke. "There is only one person who can help us." The women leaned in. The old diviner, Baba Kifo. A heavy silence filled the room. Baba Kifo was a name spoken only in whispers. He lived deep in the forbidden part of the forest, a place few dared to go. Some called him a sorcerer. Others said he was the last keeper of ancient truths. He was their only hope. Determined, Ao rose to her feet. "Then we leave at dawn." As the women nodded, a cold breeze slipped through the hut. Outside, the shadow of a woman with glowing red eyes watched them from the darkness. Madame Nshila knew, and she was ready for them. The morning sun barely touched the horizon when Ao and the others set off. Dressed in simple cloaks to avoid attention, they moved through the outskirts of Kiwanda like shadows. Every step felt heavier, as if the town itself was trying to hold them back. Mama Juma led the way, her frail fingers clutching a wooden staff. "Baba Kifo lives beyond the great baobab tree," she whispered. "We must not speak his name too loudly. The spirits listen." The path into the forbidden forest was dense and eerily silent. The deeper they walked, the more the air changed. The scent of damp earth mixed with something ancient, something forgotten. Even the birds dared not sing here. Lady Ife shuddered. "I don't like this place." "No one does," Mama Juma muttered. But they had no choice. The keeper of ancient truths. Hours later, they arrived at a clearing. In the center stood an ancient baobab tree, its twisted roots stretching out like the arms of a forgotten god. Beneath it sat a man, Baba Kifo. His skin was dark as the midnight sky, his beard long and silver. His eyes, though clouded with age, held a power that sent shivers through Ao's spine. "I have been expecting you," he said, his voice deep and knowing. The women exchanged uneasy glances. "How?" Ao began, but Baba Kifo raised a hand. "The spirits whispered your arrival," he said, turning his gaze to each woman. "You carry the mark of the cursed one." Lady Ife gasped. "You know about the hair?" Baba Kifo nodded. "It is no ordinary hair. It is woven with the strands of the forgotten dead, women sacrificed to the dark gods of the underworld." A heavy silence fell. Ao's hands clenched into fists. "Then how do we break it?" Baba Kifo studied them for a long moment. Then, he reached into a pouch and pulled out a small bone-carved pendant inscribed with strange markings. "There is only one way," he said. "You must destroy the source of her power." "The hairs?" Lady Ife asked. "No," Baba Kifo's voice grew darker. "The altar." The women stiffened. "She has an altar hidden within her mansion, where she binds the souls of her victims," Baba Kifo explained. "Until it is destroyed, the curse will live on." Ao's mind raced. Madame Nshila's mansion was the most heavily guarded place in Kiwanda. How do we get inside? She asked. Baba Kifo's lips curled into a knowing smile. With deception. He leaned forward, whispering the plan. And so, the women prepared for the most dangerous act of their lives. A shadow in the dark. As the sun set over Kiwanda, Madame Nshila stood in front of her mirror, running her hands over her flawless hair. A wicked smile played on her lips. They think they can escape, she whispered. Foolish girls. Behind her, the shadows twisted unnaturally. But for the first time, they whispered a warning. And for the first time, Madame Nshila felt something she had not felt in years. Fear. The night was thick with tension as Ao and the women approached Madame Nshila's mansion. The grand building stood in eerie silence, its golden carvings glistening under the pale moonlight. But beneath its beauty lurked darkness, and they were here to end it. Disguised as loyal customers, they walked through the massive doors. Madame Nshila greeted them with her usual charm, but Ao could see something behind her eyes, suspicion. Your turn, Madame Nshila said smoothly, her gaze sharp. More hair, perhaps? Ao forced a smile. We have come to offer you a gift, madam. She lifted a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Intrigued, Madame Nshila gestured for them to follow her into her sacred chamber, a dimly lit room filled with mirrors, black candles, and a massive altar carved from human bone. The air grew thick. The shadows whispered. As Madame Nshila unwrapped the bundle, her expression twisted in horror. Inside lay the bone-carved pendant from Baba Kifo. A sudden wind howled through the chamber. The walls trembled. The cursed wigs on display began writhing as if alive. Madame Nshila snarled, her once beautiful face contorting. You dare betray me? Ao stepped forward, her voice steady. You have stolen our souls. We have come to take them back. The battle begins. Madame Nshila let out a piercing scream, her body twisting as she transformed into something monstrous. Her once perfect hair became a nest of writhing serpents, her nails grew into claws, and her eyes burned with unholy fire. The shadows rose, forming grotesque figures. The room pulsed with dark energy. But Ao and the women were prepared. With one swift motion, Lady Ife shattered the first mirror, a portal Madame Nshila used to bind her victims. The moment it broke, the room shook violently. Mama Juma raised the pendant, chanting Baba Kifo's words. The spirits of the trapped women began to awaken. Ao seized the moment, grabbing a torch and hurling it onto the bone altar. Flames erupted. Madame Nshila screamed as her power began to unravel. The shadows turned against her, dragging her toward the burning altar. No! I created you. I am your queen, she screeched. But the spirits had turned. As the altar burned, the enchanted wigs disintegrated, releasing their hold on the women of Kiwanda. With a final, blood-curdling shriek, Madame Nshila was pulled into the abyss. The shadows swallowed her whole, and the mansion collapsed into itself, leaving nothing but ash. The redemption. As dawn broke, the women stood in the ruins of what was once Madame Nshila's empire. The curse had been lifted. Ao turned to the others. It's over. Mama Juma, now free from the dark whispers, nodded. We were blinded by vanity, but we have learned. The lesson was clear. True beauty is not in what we wear, but in the strength of our hearts. And so, Kiwanda was free. Madame Nshila was no more. And her evil was buried forever.